The Lighthouse by Knife. Day 1. Sunset. It was a peaceful day. The sun was shining through the thick grass separating me from the rest of the world. It had been a month since the last attack. I was feeling good. I surveyed the land around the towering structure. Children were running in the sand, leaving fading footprints in their wake. Waves crashed upon the shore, where many tentacle would be swept up on. Slowly, I walked back into the small area of the lighthouse that I called home. As beautiful as the beach was, I had a job to do. It felt like a better choice to sleep through the rest of the day. It wouldn't be easy to work if I was exhausted. Day 1. Dusk. When I awoke, it was already late into the night. A large clock inside the tower was blinking, letting me know it was time to work. Jasmine had visited me while I was sleeping, and Barry was sitting on the small desk, in the small room that she expected me to stay in every night. As much as I enjoyed this shelter, my dream was to be outside, amongst the living. My only visitors since the invaders were Jasmine and Gold rarely came here. I approached the glass inside, same as always. Scanned the ocean, looking for boats and ships. The waters were smooth, perfect for boating, but the sea was desolate, not a single vessel in the water. The night was tireless, leaving me praying for something to appear, wanting something to do. I spent the entire shift waiting. Eventually, the clock struck 8, and I returned to my bed and dozed off. Jasmine would probably explain the lack of boats the next time she visited. Day 2. Noon. I sat in front of the elevator, waiting for Jasmine to show up. A small arrow above the door lit up, and as the door opened, all that was inside was a note. Amphi, sorry I couldn't make it. Jasmine. The elevator was sitting open. I had never been inside before. Jasmine had always told me not to go in. My curiosity got the best of me, and I found myself looking around the elevator for anything out of the ordinary. Finally, I found my gaze falling on the array of buttons. There were 3, labeled B, 1, and 6. There were several holes where buttons appeared to have been ripped out. Not wanting to anger or scare Jasmine with my disappearance, I walked out of the elevator and headed to get some sleep. Maybe I'll get some answers soon. Day 2, midnight. The day was spent by working for a few hours, still no signs of life on the seas. Everything was silent. No one had been on the beach today. Even the tentacle were absent from the daily routine. I grew wary, thinking that the night would be quiet when I heard the elevator doors open. Another letter. Execute Phase 2. I looked at the letter for a while. What was Phase 2? Did it have something to do with the silence on the beach and the ocean? I walked back to the window expecting something to happen. I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A ladder placed beneath the window, as though it was for an escape. A red R was painted on it. I sighed. Remnants of an assault flashed through my mind. A man challenging Gold to a battle, holding me hostage. I ended up having one of my episodes, or freakouts. It always scared Jasmine when that happened, and she would have to get some sort of medicine to calm me down. I shuddered and walked away from the glass. The ladder was pointless, and I could easily forget about it. If only I could forget these images. Day 3. Dawn. The night was restless. Still no clue as to what Phase 2 was. Still no Jasmine or Gold. Still no children on the beach, or tentacle, or boats. Things were disappearing one by one. Now, the large clock was frozen, with the time forever reading 18, or 6 o'clock. I wasn't even sure anymore. The only thing worth doing anymore was looking up at the sky. It was such a beautiful view. Occasionally, I would dream about being there, amongst the clouds. It would never happen. The elevator would constantly bring up notes, all saying Execute Phase 2. Each time I entered the elevator to retrieve a letter, the buttons would be there, flashing and beckoning me. It was intriguing. The elevator could take me out, freeing me. I reached out for one of the buttons. I pulled my arm back. It seemed wrong. The only person who ever cared for me anymore was Jasmine. Gold would visit, but Jasmine was the one keeping me alive. All that was asked of me was to act as the light for ships, and to not use the elevator. It was then that I realized I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Having been so caught up in looking out the window for some signs of life, I had accidentally starved myself. I decided that there was no harm in looking for food on another floor. Finally, made the decision to press a button on the elevator, labeled 1. I exited to find a similar scene to the one I had left. I looked around. The room was identical. A feeling crept up on me, leaving me thinking that the elevator had left me at the top of the lighthouse. Without any other apparent options, I simply walked towards the middle of the room. Inside of the usual room was the body of a Pokémon, much like me. It was asleep, obviously waiting for something. As quickly as I could, I exited the small room and peered out of the window. There were children playing on the beach. Everything was normal. I was about to leave when the children vanished off of the beach. The image flashed and showed a nighttime scene similar to the one I was seeing, where the boats were all missing. My job here was done. I didn't want to see any more of it. Re-entering the elevator, I pressed the button to go to floor labeled 6. My makeshift home was destroyed. A small area had collapsed, and there was a storm gathering outside of the window. I noticed something odd, however. One of the windows was covered in static, as though it wasn't a window at all, rather a monitor. I headed back to the elevator with some hopes of getting out of here. This was the last place I wanted to be. As I reached towards the panel on the elevator wall, I noticed that the 6 button was missing. I pressed the only button left that I hadn't explored, B. The doors opened up to reveal a large room, with monitors showing static. The monitor displaying 6 showed my room, destroyed. I watched as the screen flickered black and displayed 3 words. Execute Phase 3. That was the Lighthouse. Final thoughts? A good idea. I really like the idea of this creepypasta, however, I think it was poorly executed. The first 3/4 of the story were quite boring and could be trimmed down a lot. They were there as a setup for the kind of life that Amphi lives and to show what normal is for him, but they could stand to be a lot shorter. Near the end, the rising action was nice where Amphi starts figuring out what's going along with the reader, and that's where the creepiness comes from, but then it just kind of stops. Way too soon at that. There is no payoff or falling action. It doesn't even end on a high point because we don't know nearly enough to be creeped out by what Phase 3 is. And that's the other major problem. We don't know nearly enough. We can guess as to what's going on, but we're never going to know more than a very general idea. It's good to have some mystery, as fear from the unknown is often where creepiness comes from. However, when you know so little, you can't really form much of an idea either than that Team Rocket probably has Amphi locked up in some sort of fake lighthouse. There are a metric buttload of questions this raises that an answer isn't even slightly hinted at. Questions like, why is Amphi allowed in the elevator? Why is the ladder outside of the window if it's not a real window and instead just a monitor? Do they have any plans in place for if Amphi wakes up during the monitor's transition, or if he just can't sleep? And biggest of all, what possible reason do they have for doing any of this? The answer to none of these questions are even hinted at, so we're left with an extremely rough idea of what's going on, no real grounds to make any guesses with evidence to back it up, and you're left just not caring. If this were to happen to you in real life, it would be creepy, but it's not happening to you in real life. Because of that, you have to find a way to make the reader think more about it. To get them to think about it, you need to give them a reason, and to give them a place to start. We have a reason, but no place to start, so the story just ends up being given up on and leaves little to no impact. Again, this is a great idea for a story, but it needs reworking. That's it for this creepypasta. Tune in again next Saturday when we tackle yet another story made and sent in by the fans with Endless Ice. If you want to write your own story, help peer edit a story, or even just read the stories early, check out the description where you'll find a link to the creepypasta section of my forum. You'll also find a link to the playlist of every creepypasta reading I've done. If you're interested in keeping up on my blog posts, join the Facebook fan page linked below. Remember that if you want your story to be read on the show, you must stay active on your post on the forums, as well as read the forum rules. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, will this medicine cure Amphi?